welcome John DeMay to the stage. After the tragic loss of his 17-year-old son, Jordan, to a sextortion scheme, John has become a passionate advocate for accountability and justice, dedicating himself to holding the responsible parties accountable and challenging big tech companies to prioritize the safety of young users. So thank you for being here.
Good morning.
John, thank you so much for being a voice. We're honored that we get to sit on stage with you today, and your wife Jessica is here. Thank you for being here, Jessica.
Beautiful wife, Jessica.
Beautiful wife. The fact, there's so much. We got the privilege of just meeting you before we got on stage, but I'd love you to explain a little bit about Jordan's story, and let me just jump right into this, but I'm wondering how you feel with CESE just passing, because I feel like without parents there, I don't know that it would have passed, to be honest. But looking in the eyes of parents and how strong you are as a dad, that you could sit there and fight for justice for your son. And so share a little bit about your story, Jordan's story, and thank you.
Yeah, really, it's not my story. It's Jordan's story, and unfortunately, we're just the delivery here. So, but Jordan was, he was 17 years old, couple 6-8 weeks from his 18th birthday, 185 pounds, 6'2", all-star basketball player, all-conference basketball player, football player. Played baseball, super happy kid, handsome, popular, the perfect target. He really was. And, he was this close of moving out of the house and starting a new life and on his own as an adult. And 2 years ago, March 25th, I woke up and I found him in his bedroom with a gunshot wound to the head on the day that we were supposed to leave on a Florida vacation for 2 weeks. And so, as you can imagine, we were all pretty shocked. And why, what happened, this happy kid who had his bags packed at his feet on the bed, ready to go to Florida, is gone. And it's difficult, and you just, I remember standing there just wondering why. And then 2 days later, a photo emerged of himself, and it was sent to his girlfriend. And we found out that he was being extorted for money from a picture that he had sent to a young lady on Instagram. So about 4 days later, after we sent the picture to the detective that was handling the case, it went to the FBI. The FBI, the sheriff's department initially sent in. Oh, I'm sorry, a little closer. Okay. Yeah, I understand, thank you. So this explicit picture was found, and we sent to the detectives. They immediately knew what it was originally. Obviously, they see these cases all the time. Sent in for search warrant preservation warrants to Meta, which were denied under the emergency procedures that they had. Eventually went to the FBI. 4 days later, we get the entire transcript of what happened that night. It was 6 hours of torture. It started at about 10:15 at night. The night that I saw him the last time, he'd actually just received his first message from what he thought was a young lady named Danny Roberts. Danny Roberts was actually a man from Nigeria. And fast forward 6 months, the FBI actually located and arrested 6 Nigerians, 3 of which are indicted in the United States, 2 of which are here sitting in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They're going to be sentenced. They pled guilty, and they're looking at 30 years in prison. One of them is still in Nigeria fighting extradition, and actually Wednesday morning, 5 Americans were arrested in Atlanta and Birmingham for the money laundering side. So we have 11 people in custody. So I got here because what happened is our community was devastated when Jordan died. Everybody couldn't understand why this kid would do that. So when we discovered that he didn't kill himself, he was literally murdered into my bedroom at 3 o'clock in the morning, 6 hours after his first text message. And his mother and I And my wife and our family decided we needed to let the community know that this stuff is going on because it's happening. And obviously they were continuing to do it because other people were getting messages after Jordan died. So we talked to the sheriff, whom we knew, and he said, hey, we don't normally want to comment on suicides, but this is different, and if you're comfortable, let's do it. So we did a press conference, and here we are today. But I'm just thankful that all the people in this room, and there's tech people in here, and there's probably law enforcement in here, and survivors, and all the people that are making this thing happen, but it's real. And I'm former law enforcement, and I can tell you that this is, it's a tragedy, because as soon as you scratch the surface a little bit, there's so much. And I was at a law enforcement conference in Atlanta last month, and I'm hearing that literally every single teenager that's on social media is getting targeted for this type of crime. Every single one. So if you're a parent in here and you think your kids are not being targeted, wrong. You're wrong. It's just a matter of how much they bite into it. They're getting the fake requests, these hacked accounts, they're reaching out to them. Whether they're deleting them, whether they're friend requesting them and then communicating with them and then shutting it down, whether they're sending them money, they don't tell you, whether they're sending them pictures and they don't tell you. It's from one end of that spectrum all the way to the other, but every single teenager is getting targeted, and it needs to stop. And the tech companies in this room need to make it happen.
Thank you, John. There's so many questions I could ask you, but I want to ask you, in the last couple years, looking at tech and the accountability you're going after, what do you think is some of the most important things with COSA, just with what's going on? What do we need to hear that you're working on that's so pivotal with this case?
Well, right, it's a lot of different things. We have this big criminal movement that's happening. Jordan's case is the first one in the United States history that's had extradition for sextortion out of Nigeria. So in the law enforcement community, Jordan's very well known. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, was just in Nigeria recently speaking with Nigerian officials regarding Jordan's case and building that relationship. So hopefully those connections will help other families today who are grieving, who don't have a voice, and those who are going to be victims tomorrow. So there's that piece, and there's the awareness piece, which we've been doing for a long time, but there's the accountability piece, right? It's the tech companies that aren't doing enough, and COSA is wonderful, and there was several other bills that were on the table that were wonderful, but I was in DC here 6-7 months ago talking about COSA in front of a committee that was fully on board, and it passed last week. I mean, why is it 6 months, folks? Simple. Why is it 6 months? And it's not enough. COSA's not enough.
Well, obviously this case is historical, precedent setting, and the sentencing is set for next month. Is that
correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Tell us about how you feel like this case is significant when we look forward to things like this happening in the future. How is this going to change things?
I think first off, the word is getting overseas, from the FBI officials and the people that I've talked to, that the word on the street overseas is that we got to be careful. We can't be killing these kids. So that's a small piece of it, but it's something that might save lives, right? They have to understand that just because there's an ocean between us, this country will come after you with the full weight of this law enforcement and everything, and they will come after you if they can. So it's happening, and I think as the relationships build, other treaties get signed, and some of those governmental red tape issues kind of dissolve, I think we'll have a much more successful time bringing folks back and holding them accountable.
Well, it really is kind of uncharted territory, right? I mean, it's
Certainly.
exciting that, and amazing that you've pursued it like you have and been such an advocate for your son. I have 3 teenagers, so, it's something I think about a lot, just, how difficult that would be. So appreciate you being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, since you mentioned that, Casey, with teenagers, let's take advantage. I think, how many parents do we have in the room? Just a few. Okay.
2.
So you've got an audience of a few parents. Tell us what you would tell each and every one of us and what conversations we need to be having with our children.
I think the biggest thing is we really need to limit what we let our children do on these devices. The entire world is at our fingertips. And it's hard. I spoke with a mother, a friend of mine I went to high school with in Menards for 45 minutes the other day, and she's like, John, it's so hard. I'm banging my head against the wall every day trying to get my 16-year-old to understand this stuff, and she's pushing and driving. I said, just keep doing it. You're not the bad mom. You're being the good mom. You're being the responsible mom. Just keep pushing. And it's hard. I'm a dad, too. I have an 8 and 10-year-old at home, and they all want phones and everything else. It's going to be hard. Well, all my friends do. Well, sorry. It is what it is. You got to be a parent. I use this analogy all the time. Would you all let your 14-year-olds run around in a strip club? Probably not. Probably wouldn't let them run around on Instagram and Facebook either, because to be honest with you, that strip club is probably more secure than social media is. So think about that next time you hand the entire world to your 14-year-old daughter to go sit in her room by herself.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too, I mean, I'm not the best example of this, but just having that, open communication with your children and not being afraid to address hard topics like that, even though it's awkward and hard and not something that you look forward to doing maybe, but just how important that is. And then, just not only your own children, but just, talking about this issue, talking about this case, and just being, making people open or aware and of all the things that you're doing. So thanks for doing that. What specifically do you feel like are things that we could take away to help our kids?
Yeah.
Are there things specific you'd say?
Yeah, one thing that I really never paid much attention to, and one of our FBI agents had told me this early on. He said one of the common denominators in these cases is exclusivity. Your children are being exclusive with technology, and technology is great. I'm a technology guy too. I'm a Gen Xer. I grew up with pagers and no phones, and now we have all this stuff, so I like it. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's a good idea to let our kids sit in their bedrooms with the door closed with it. They're in the basements or in their spaces all alone. I mean, if you want to have technology, let's keep it out front, because if your son or daughter is being extorted or things are bad are happening, it's not going to happen when they're sitting on the couch next to you while you're watching the news. So keeping the technology away from them exclusively, probably putting some time limits. I mean, when Jordan was young, we had everything. I had a separate wireless router that he didn't even have access to ours, and it shut off at 8 o'clock, and I had every parental control on it, but he found ways to work around that over time, and we just as parents work around it. But do all those things and put your time restriction on it, put screen time limits on it. There's just so much negativity, and there's so many more positive things that we could all be doing. My girls run around our neighborhood with the other kids all day and play and build forts and sled and do all the things. That's what kids need to be doing. Getting some dirt underneath the fingernails.
What specifically do you feel like tech companies should be doing to protect our kids better?
Everything, right? CESE is wonderful. These are all great things, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot of stuff about Section 230, which gives social media companies blanket immunity for pretty much anything. So, my son and all these other young people that have died because of social media, they have no accountability, and that needs to change. If social media can sit on Capitol Hill and tell us all how above board their business is, right? They're great and they're doing all these wonderful things, and then why wouldn't they just let 230 vanish and everybody under the planet could sue them? But you know what? They would win every single time because they're so above board, right? But the fact of the matter is they're not. So. But what I'd like to see, honestly, is I'd like to see tech companies build some AI technology to monitor IP addresses. I would love to see some federal legislation that would force them to ID verify. With those two things alone, probably would cut down 70-80% of the crime itself. Every single laptop computer has an IP address, and the 4 men in Nigeria bought hacked accounts from another group and use those hacked accounts simultaneously on the same device to victimize multiple people at the same time. Guess what? Meta has a technology to know that. They have the technology to know that. Why didn't they not flag that, shut those accounts down, flag them, have a human person look at them, say, oh, this is okay, and move on? It's a program that could probably probably a college level programmer could probably put that together in an afternoon for them if they needed to call somebody. ID verification, simple, right? I had to have an ID to get on an airplane yesterday. We have to have an ID to go vote. Simple things, right? Have some sort of KYC, which is know your customer technology that says, hey, I'm gonna have a Facebook account, here's my address, this is who I am, a real person, right? They have to verify that a real human being exists on this platform. It's just simple things, but it's user count, and they use user count to sell ads, and ads make money, so that's the problem that we're all running into. So those are the two big things that I'd like to see the tech companies focus on.
Thank you, John. That's our questions, but I do want to just leave a space if there's anything we didn't ask that you want to leave us with today. Or just...
Get your kids outside.
That's good. Love that. I think I hear from so many people, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this. People DM me on Instagram and say, I want to be a part of ending exploitation. How do I help? And the first question I ask them is, do you talk to your children? And a lot of times they're like, no, that's awkward. And I'm like, well, that's where you start. That's where you start. And so I think, thank you for your bravery to tell us all and remind us all to talk to our children. I love your simple solutions for tech, even though clearly not that simple because it's not happening. And so if you're here with tech today or have questions or want to ask John, he'll be here. So let's connect and grow stronger from this moment. So thank you for being with us, John.
Thank you.